As you can tell, I still haven't fixed the glare. Probably looks worse, doesn't it? Just kidding. What's up, guys? So today we're actually going to be taking another deep dive look into another Pokemon that has been somewhat requested frequently. It just actually, after everything that we've already done, it just now hit the top. So, not super requested, but still pretty requested. And it's nice because yesterday we went over dragons in general, and today we're going to take a deep dive into Dragonair. So Dragonair is actually a pure dragon type Pokemon, maxing out at level 40 with 15s across the board at 1780. So very nice CP there. Really means that we get a lot of our potential stats pushed out in the Great League. You can actually hit 1499 at level 34 if you have a 1 on attack, 15 defense, and 15 stamina on your IV spread there, which is probably going to get you the best stat product possible out of your Dragonair. He does, according to my spreadsheets and all the numbers that I have ran, rank 46th in bulk and 43rd in stat products, so kind of respectable. I mean, he's kind of middle of the road, unfortunately, which doesn't end up meaning that he's like amazing by any means. We have seen that just because these numbers are low that the moves can bring us back here, so let's go ahead and look into these moves. Now, I do have our dragon type moves color coded here for the stab effect, and of course we only have 2 dragon moves here, Dragon Breath and Dragon Pulse. So let's actually start with our fast moves though. We do have Dragon Breath and Iron Tail. Dragon Breath just makes a lot more sense here. It does more damage, it does gain more energy. It is a dragon type move, it's a stab move, so it just makes all sense to me to go with Dragon Breath here rather than Iron Tail. Iron Tail probably does have its place in another cup, but not this time. Moving on to our charge moves, we do have 3 charge moves which are very interesting, and I think his charge moves are really the point in talking about him. He doesn't shine really up here as much as he does right here in these 3. So we do have Wrap, costing 45 energy for 60 damage at a 1.33 damage energy ratio. Then we do have Aqua Tail costing 35 for 50 damage at a 1.43. And then we have Dragon Pulse coming up here at the end with 60 energy for 90 damage at a 1.5 ratio. So the fact that we have Wrap and Aqua Tail here, I really do think that's the only reason that we're talking about Dragonair. Originally, I saw a lot of hype around Dragonair because it had Aqua Tail, and Aqua Tail being in this cup really makes it do really well against the fire types. Now, I do agree with that very much, but as you guys heard yesterday in the Dragon video, Aqua Tail really is a more of a securing option against fire types, and Dragonair is already really good against the fire types. So the fact that you have Aqua Tail can kind of win more, like you do better against those, but honestly what I've found is that Wrap actually covers a more wide spread of matches than Aqua Tail even does. So for me personally, I think my preferred moveset is definitely going to be Dragon Breath, Wrap, and Dragon Pulse. So the reason that I do this is because you actually end up winning the most matches across the entire cup with those 3 moves. So let's actually get into our shield situations and kind of show the power of Dragon Breath, Wrap, and Dragon Pulse here, because that is the moveset that I ran all of these numbers with here. So in a scenario where no shields versus no shields, whenever we just have straight up, just kind of like a closing situation, we end up winning 48.7% of our matchups, which is fairly decent. I mean, that's a lot more than some that we've seen in the cup, but it's not quite as good as others, but that's a pretty decent start. Next, we move into 2 shields versus 0 shields. So in a situation where I have 2 shields and my opponent has 0 shields, I want to know which Pokemon just are always going to flat out beat me, so that I can really find an answer to these Pokemon if I'm going to be using Dragonair on my team. There were 2 Pokemon. At 97.4% wins, 2 Pokemon really broke through, that being Mawile and Bronzong, which we just did a deep dive on Bronzong not too long ago. So the fact that Steel is actually going to end up resisting Dragon types really puts those two in a very favorable position. Mawile especially, because Mawile is going to resist it even more based on the fairy typing, if I'm not mistaken. Both of those end up having a really favorable matchup up against us, no matter how many shields we have, so it really just makes us fall to those two Pokemon in pretty much a lot of scenarios. Next scenario we have here is 0 shields versus 2 shields. So which Pokemon can we just flat out beat if I don't have any shields but they still have 2 shields? Well, kind of interesting here. We win 7.7% of those matchups, and out of that 7%, Salamence and Kingdra, yes, Kingdra is in that list. So kind of interesting that Salamence and Kingdra are going to be hard countered by Dragonair here. It makes a lot of sense if you think about that they both carry the dragon typing, and Kingdra, a lot of Kingdra's moves, unless it carries Blizzard, it's not going to have anything that is really going to do crazy amounts of damage to Dragonair. Now, another interesting one that I found is that we don't necessarily always beat, but we do tie against Flygon, pending that Flygon has Dragon Claw. So, as you guys know, in my deep dive, I chose to go against Dragon Claw because you actually end up winning more matches without it. But if it carries Dragon Claw, like I do expect a lot of people to run, you can tie against it using Dragonair here. Last but not least, in our last scenario here, 2 shields versus 2 shields. So how do we end up doing in an opening situation as a leadoff Pokemon? We actually end up winning 57.7% matchups. Pretty respectable there. Almost 60% of the matchups when we lead off with Dragonair there. So it's definitely not an amazing Pokemon in terms of its matchups, but it actually does end up having a kind of unique use case where you can actually use it up against certain matchups. So let's actually go into some matchups here. So, in every deep dive, I always end up taking our subject Pokemon and I stick them up against the top 10 bulkiest Pokemon in the cup just to kind of see how we do up against the bulky types. Well, Dragonair has a really hard time here, so we actually end up losing to Bastiodon, Registeel, Probopass, Steelix, Dugong, Altaria, Lapras, Skarmory, Lucario, and Fortress. As you can see, that's just straight up 10 Pokemon. But I did include a couple of extras like Lucario. He's of course not the top 10 bulkiest. And I do include Probopass there because Probopass is possible to come out in the next few weeks. I'm really hoping. But we actually do end up winning against Regice and Torkoal. And that kind of shows you a little bit of glimpse into what our use case is for Dragonair here. So as far as our counters go, let's talk about what should we be using our Dragonair for on our team, and what should we be planning to bring if we feel that Dragonair is going to be an issue. Well, if you want to counter Dragonair, you can really just go after 2 different typings, and that's Ice and Steel. Things like Alolan Ninetales, Frostlass, Piloswine, all do really good up against our Dragonair here, pending that you use Ice type moves. Steel types as well, like Mawile, Aggron, and Steelix, all end up resisting a ton of our damage, and even it kind of cements the fact whenever we use Wrap, we just don't have like nearly enough damage to push out to those Steel types, so it ends up kind of making us pretty useless against the Steel types. Now, as far as what do we actually use Dragonair for, well, he has really good matchups against the fire types this month. So things like Camerupt, Blaziken, and even Alolan Marowak. So Alolan Marowak was the hardest one for Dragonair to take out. It's a pretty close fight according to PvPoke, but he does end up taking out Alolan Marowak, which was the #1 fire type in the list. He doesn't lose to any fire types, period. So you can basically hard counter an entire typing by using Dragonair. And even though I go with Wrap, you can go with Aqua Tail to really even secure that entire typing match in your favor. So definitely keep that in mind. Now, as well, we do have a favorable matchup against a lot of the dragons. So yesterday in the dragon video, I talked about how Altaria is the best dragon, hands down. If it wasn't clear, I'm very sorry, but that's kind of what I was going for. Altaria is just going to flat out end up beating every other dragon, but Dragonair actually ends up winning against Kingdra and Flygon, and if you use Dragon Breath, Wrap, and Dragon Pulse, you can actually tie against Shelgon. So there's that. You do have kind of a niche use case where you can kind of get a lot of the fire types out of the way by using Dragonair, but you do have to really watch out for the ice and the steel types both in this meta because they are going to hurt you really, really bad. Lastly, here in our deep dives, I want to talk about a few pros and cons. So let's actually start with the bad stuff first. Our first con is that Dragonair can be pretty easily countered. Being that most people are going to be running Altaria, I can feel that because Altaria is the best dragon type, there's not a whole lot of reason not to run one. So you're going to be pretty easily countered with Altaria. You have really, really bad matchups against both Bastiodon and Lucario and Lapras, and that kind of leads into the next con, is that it does really bad up against the Kings. So you really have to pay attention to what you kind of throw out Dragonair for, based on your team composition, how effective is it going to actually be. There's just kind of a lot of weird stuff that you can kind of get easily countered by whenever you go and use a Dragonair. Now, on the pro side, I do have one big pro. And that one big pro is that it's really, really, really fast at charging up. So you can actually get to this Aqua Tail in just over 5 seconds. In 5 seconds, you can start spamming Aqua Tail, which is crazy. And Wrap isn't too far behind it. You're going to be able to spam Wrap in just over, what, 7 seconds, I think, if my math is right? So you're very quick to charge, you're very quick to throw out some charge moves, and that creates a lot of shield pressure. And depending on what you're going up against, if you lead with a Dragonair and they lead with a fire type, you could end up getting them to waste several shields, especially if they think you're running Aqua Tail and you run Wrap. You can shield bait them so hard, and that's so fun. It's so fun. But that is actually my take on Dragonair. I don't know for sure if I'm going to end up using it. I think it's kind of a hard sell. Considering that Altaria just beats every other dragon, I know that Altaria is definitely going to be on my team. I don't know that I would run 2 dragons that just end up doing the same job. Like, I definitely would run Dragonair and Flygon. I definitely would run Shelgon and Altaria. No. I definitely would run something like Altaria and Kingdra, but having 2 dragons on the team is going to be a hard sell to begin with because of their typing, and then having 2 dragons that have a very similar use case that just makes the team extremely narrow. I don't know how much I would go for that, but that's just my opinion, guys. I'd love to know yours. Please let me know down in the comments below what you think of Dragonair. How likely are you to use Dragonair? Because I'm kind of on the middle of the road. I have one powered up. I've definitely not invested in a second move yet. And it's a hard sell for me. That's just my opinion, though. I'd love to hear yours. Please let me know what you have to say down in those comments below. And thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any deep dives that you're still looking forward to, even though we have covered a ton of Pokemon already this month, I still have a ton to go through. But please do not hesitate to let me know what you're looking forward to down in those comments below, and I will try to get to it as soon as I possibly can. So, thank you guys so much for watching. If you like to like videos, make sure you do that. If you don't, you can be that guy. Otherwise, let me know what you have to say down in those comments below. And until our next video, I will catch you then.